largest palace to be built in the very middle of the 18th century. So it was built in all that Baroque style, but unfortunately, as well as many of the Russian palaces at that time, its heating system wasn't perfect. They used those stoves, and the spackle could always again, feet of the great hand in hand with the goddess of wisdom, another version of that portrait. So this is the home chapel of the Winter Palace, which is called the Grand Church, the Grand Church of the Winter Palace. So the architect, originally that Italian architect decided to design this church like one of the staterooms, just like one of the rooms. That's one. Alexander I, the most favorite grandson of Catherine II. She was quite an interfering mother-in-law. She took him immediately after he was born from his parents, just because she decided to bring him up in her own way. And frankly speaking, she succeeded. She became one of the most liberal monarchs in Russia, very liberal, sometimes even too liberal. So Alexander I, who ruled Russia from 1801 up to 1825, when he died naturally. No assassination, no mysterious disappearing, just died.
Yeah.
So
of natural causes after his wife poisoned him.
So Alexander I is depicted on his way to Paris. Look, in the background you can see Paris. No Eiffel Tower yet, so it's not very easy to realize this is the Paris, but believe me. So it was on his orders that this gallery was created. It was created by an Italian architect, Carlo Rossi. So, if you look at this from the architectural point of view, it's very impressive. Skylights, the ceiling painting, all those chandeliers and beautiful parquet floors, but it's not the most important thing in here. So all those minor portraits are the portraits of all the officers, Russian officers of very high rank, like major generals. You say it this way, major generals, because we say the other way, general majors.
Well, major.
So major generals, lieutenant generals, who participated in that war, and along with Alexander I, conquered Paris. So once in the Russian history, the Russian army conquered Paris, but they behaved like we
This guy must have fallen off the favor.
They were all very well educated. They were not just the officers, they were composers, poets, whatever, artists. So, and for them, it was a shock that those slaves, those peasants, had the same patriotic feelings towards their motherland. And for the first time in the Russian history, the nobility, the nobles, and the simple people acted together against the invader, against Napoleon. Another thing, all those guys, to come to Paris, they went across all Europe and they could see how people lived at that time in Europe, much better than people lived in Russia. So on coming back home, Russia seemed so backward for all those guys. I mean, what I'm trying to say, all that resulted in the uprising, in December of 1825, there was uprising organized by the nobles, some of them by their younger brothers or their sons. So, and they wanted to change the absolute monarchy into the constitutional monarchy, as now they have in the UK and in many countries the constitutional monarchy. So they used the time when Alexander I died and another guy refused to have the Russian throne. So, and the younger brother of that Alexander I, that Nicholas on two legs, that unstable Nicholas, came and he severely suppressed the uprising. 5 main guys, 5 bleeding guys, were executed in the fortress of St. Peter and Paul, and all the rest were exiled to Siberia for life, never given a permission to come back to Moscow, to St. Petersburg. But anyway, since that time, Russia never got back. And in fact, that was the beginning of the Russian Revolution in 1917, because it was a shame to have that slavery, to have that absolute monarchy. So if perhaps they had succeeded, we would have lived with the constitutional monarchy still, we don't know. So the history is full of ifs.
Sure. Yeah.
Sure. So this is, I mean, that's why this place, I mean, is really very important. Really very important. That is the beginning of everything. I mean, those guys changed a lot of things in Russia. On coming back from that war, they gave freedom immediately to their slaves.